Hey guys, Falsa week topic breakdown Ella on Learn Irish Online, and today we're going to be looking all at the perfect tense. So firstly, before anything else, what do I mean by the perfect tense? The perfect tense in English is essentially anything when you're talking about stuff that's already happened and you're using the have form at the start. So I've done the work, I've eaten the breakfast, I've broken the window, I've cleaned my room, anything like that. It's really good to learn as Gaeilge for a few reasons. One, it's not too tricky. The concept at first can be a bit foreign or weird in terms of how to form it in Irish, because it's not as simple as just making a conjugation like it would be for past, present or future tense. So the kind of structure of it is a bit odd, but once you get it, it's quite easy to use and quite easy to repeat. I'm going to teach you one sentence that you can use to basically form any other sentence, no matter how complicated it might be in the language, in this tense, in the perfect tense, and also it's something I rarely hear learners use. So therefore it gives you a big advantage in terms of sounding more fluent, sounding more polished. And also, just like in English, how I don't always want to be saying I ate my dinner or I cleaned my room. Often it makes more sense, and depending on the context, depending how recently we've done it, if we're still doing it, it might make more sense to say I have cleaned my room, I have eaten my dinner. So it's also going to allow us to be more exact or more precise in terms of the idea we're trying to express. So firstly, we're going to start off, and this is the sentence I really want you guys to always remember. It doesn't matter what you're doing in the perfect tense as Gaeilge. We're going to say I have done the work, and it's going to be tá an obair déanta agam. So I've done the work, tá an obair déanta agam. So I think with all these kind of concepts in Irish, guys, one of the best things you can do, especially the more complicated ones, is just think of a really simple sentence that you can always fall back on. And then you can kind of go in different directions from there and change the tense, change the person, change the owner or the possessor, depending on what you might be talking about, the subject, object. If you've got a preposition in there, like we do here with the egg, changing the egg form to different people. And you can go from that sentence, let's say, tá an obair déanta agam, I've done the work, to something way more confusing, but still using the same tense, like the people in Australia haven't earned enough money or something. It may seem much more bigger, much scarier, but when you actually break it down, it's the exact same pillars and the exact same points throughout the sentence, the exact same structure around the sentence. And so therefore remembering something simple like tá an obair déanta agam and applying the same principles to other sentences can make it much easier. So why is it tá an obair déanta agam? Well, let's actually start at the end firstly with agam. And this is kind of similar to English if you think about it. So in English, the main two uses of the word have come down to one, possession. So tá liróid agam, I have a ball, which we already know in Irish, or presume you guys know already. So tá cluiche acu a nocht, they have a game tonight. Tá isce Eki, she has water, whatever it might be. Okay, we can think of really simple sentences like that. But in English, the other big use of have is this, the perfect tense. I have done this work, I have recorded this podcast, I have cleaned the window, whatever it might be. And the good thing is, in Irish for the possession, so case number one of using the have in English, we use the egg, and also use the egg when we're talking about I have done something, even though we're not talking about possession. It's essentially an auxiliary verb or a help verb in English, but we're also going to use the egg. So that's an easy way to remember it. So with tá an obair déanta agam, you can see straight away what I'm doing is essentially the work is done at me. So in a similar way to communicate the idea of I have a dog, I'll say a dog is at me, tá madra agam. It's essentially the exact same thing, tá an obair déanta agam. So that brings you, I suppose, onto the order, and it's always going to be this order, okay? So he has seen the game, tá an cluiche feiceála aige. Tá an cluiche feiceála aige. So the game is seen at him. Okay, so I suppose he's seen the game, you have what you'd have at the end of the sentence with the game coming quite early with the verb tá. Okay? Tá an cluiche feiceála aige. He has closed the door, tá an doras dúnta aige. Tá an doras dúnta aige. So now we can already see the order. We're going to use the present tense verb to be. It's always going to be tá. If we're communicating the idea of I have done something, we're going to get to I had done it later on. Don't worry about that for now. But then, what about the déanta? Tá an obair déanta agam. Where does the déanta come from? That is essentially the verbal adjective. Guys, so if you look up And you can do this through your glance card either. It's the last column in the glance card. So we've got past, present, future, or before that we've even got the root. Then we've got the verbal noun, which is essentially continuous and infinitive. And then the last column is your verbal adjective. So it's the one you might have as much experience with. Or if you go onto folklore.ie or Tanglen and you look up the grammar tab on any of those, you'll see the verbal noun and the verbal adjective written at the top. The verbal adjective is used for this, so essentially the same as words in English such as done, broken, cleaned, taken, given, anything like that, played as well, whatever it might be. And we're going to use it for these forms. This is essentially the time where you're going to use it most often. Sometimes they use it just directly as an adjective as well. Tá obair déanta, the work is done. For example, we won't even have to say Tá obair déanta agam, I've done the work. So you can also use it in that form, but we're just going to focus on, again, the perfect tense today. They all end with vowels, which makes it a bit easier to kind of remember them. You will just have to learn kind of some of them off, and not even learn some of them off, but just, again, going back to our main philosophy on Learn Irish Online of trying to speak in your head as much as you can all the time, making yourself run into all the stuff you don't know, and then going, okay, I don't know that, I don't know the word for broken, I don't know the word for eaten, I don't know the word for cleaned, so I'm going to look it up, I'm going to find it, and then I'm going to learn it and have it and use it regularly so I remember it. So that's just the verbal adjective we're going to take out, and that's essentially everything. Tá obair déanta agam, I have done the work, so the work is done at me, essentially. And again, some more examples. I've already gone through a few. Tá an leabhar leitsa acu, so they have read the book. Again, I can just change the egg form for it to be anyone else. Equally, if I'm naming the person in the exact same way, let's say Tá madra acu, they have a dog, but Tá madra ag an grúpa, the group have a dog. So I can just use the egg form on its own and then name the group or the person afterwards. Okay, so Sean has done the work. Tá obair déanta ag Sean. Then I can change what the actual thing is we're talking about. So instead of obair, it could be, again, cluiche. We're always using cluiche here, but let's just use it again. It's easy to remember. Tá an cluiche déanta ag Sean. Sean has done the game. Then I can change what I'm using with déanta. I can change the verb. So if I want to say Sean has played the game, I can say Tá an cluiche imirthe ag Sean. Tá an cluiche imirthe ag Sean. So just bit by bit, again, we've kind of captured 3 or 4 main pillars there in terms of the verb to be, the actual noun we're talking about, the verbal adjective, and then egg form, and the possessor, who it might be at the end, who's done the action. But just changing each one of them individually, apart from the verb to be, for now, we've gone from I have done the work to Sean has played the game. Okay, so see how it's really easy to change. Very similar again to madra agam. I can change the agam to acu. I can change the madra to chak. And all of a sudden, they have a house instead of I have a dog. So it's just by keeping those 4 pillars in mind. So tá an cluiche imirthe ag Sean. Sean has played the game. And that's essentially it, guys. It takes some practice to get used to, definitely. But you see how it's really useful. The amount of times in English, and I want you to maybe take note of this today, actually, and over your next conversation. See how regularly you're using that kind of perfect tense in English, and how it would sound a bit jarring and a bit kind of unfluent, or just a bit stuttering to always be saying the normal past tense in terms of Sean played the game. But depending on the context again, depending on how recently you might have done it, whether you're still doing it, whether you're with Sean or not, you might often want to say in English, Sean has played the game, Tá an cluiche imirthe ag Sean as Gaeilge. So it's the exact same in terms of whenever you would use that, or you would want to use that in English, you would use it as Gaeilge. Okay, that's the easy way to remember it and remember what you're talking about. This doesn't work for every single verb, guys, and this is why on a very technical level, there is no perfect tense in Irish. This is just essentially a trick you use, or the way you kind of communicate the perfect tense of most verbs. It only works with verbs where there's a noun suffering the action. So we've kind of gone through that. Tá an obair déanta agam. The work is being done, it's suffering the action, therefore we can use it. But imagine if we were saying, I've gone. Okay, I've left, I've gone. There's no noun suffering the actions. How would you even go about, would you say Tá imithe agam? You can't, it doesn't really make sense, even though imithe is gone, but we can only use that for whatever. I am gone, tá mé imithe. So it doesn't work for verbs that don't create suffering onto the noun, and you'll find those are the same verbs again and again and again. You get it with the transitive verbs to go and to come, and also you get it with the verb to be. So anytime you're saying I have been, here for 2 months or whatever, you're not going to be able to say that. But I'm going to show you a trick with how you can get around that. Also, in terms of the verb to be, but the verb to go and come, you won't have it because you can never really have nouns suffering the action with it. Okay, that's important to remember. And then anytime you use any of the other verbal adjectives and the verbs basically just by themselves, so I have eaten, full stop, we can't use it. Okay, we have to say I have eaten what? You have to tell me what you've eaten, otherwise it's not going to make sense. Ask Gaeilge. Okay, so it just works for essentially all the sentences that we've just gone through. But you'll find those are kind of 90% of the times you're wanting to communicate this idea of having done something anyway. Okay, in terms of the I have been, guys, a lot of the time when you're saying I have been, you're going to be talking about a time period. So you're going to be saying I have been working here for 2 years. I've been busy for 3 weeks. And there's a way to communicate this. It's completely different. What we're going to say, let's again take a nice simple one. I have been working here for 2 years. We're going to say Tá mé ag obair anseo le gábh líon anús. Tá mé ag obair anseo le gábh líon anús. So the le X anús, let's call it, where X is a period of time, essentially means for 2 years, kind of up until this point. So it's still continuing. You think about in English, I've been working here for 2 years. What's that indicate? It means I'm still here. I'm not saying I worked here for 2 years because it's still ongoing. I'm still working here. So gá le X anús is essentially 2 years up until now and continuing through this point. Okay, so Tá mé ag obair le gábh líon anús. I have been working, or Tá mé ag obair anseo le gábh líon anús. I have been working here for 2 years. Tá mé an gnóthach le lá anús. I've been very busy for a day, for the last day. Often you communicate it in English. So that kind of same idea can be communicated when it's I have been and you're talking about a time period with le X anús. You're not going to say fa. If we say fa, gábh líon, that could be 2 years in the future, 2 years that we're in the middle of, 2 years that were 10 years ago, 2011 and 2012 I was working there. But we're talking about the last 2 years up until this point. Again, that idea of I have been, which we don't have in Irish. We can't use I have been with the perfect tense form that we looked at earlier. So that's a good way of doing it. Equally, I can change that to I had been by just changing the tá to V. So I had been working, let's say I am talking about 2011 and 2012 working there. I might be talking about 2013 and I might be saying Bhí mé ag obair anseo le gábh líon anús. I had been working here for 2 years. And it's the exact same thing. We're on the back to what we talked about at the start. If I want to say I had done the work, I can say bhí an obair déanta agam. Nice and simple. I just changed the tense. Bhí an obair déanta agam. I had done the work. You won't use I will have done the work too much, but you might have, I will have done the work by Sunday. And that will be, any guesses? By an obair déanta agam. Again, riv J Downey or whatever, if you want to add something to the end before Sunday or by Sunday. Same even I would have done. So bheadh an obair déanta agam, same again. So that is essentially it, guys. Remember, we have our pillars. Always remember tá an obair déanta agam. So for this idea of I have done the work, we're saying the work is done at me. So a lot of familiarities to just basic possession. I have a dog, I have water, whatever else it might be. Then from there, we always remember the order of it in terms of the kind of thing coming first, then the verbal adjective. The verbal adjective you can get from Chandlin or from folklore, again showing up on screen earlier, and I'm going to put it here now. Again, in terms of right beside the verbal noun, and if it's a glance card, it's going to be on the last column on the far right on the glance card, and we can change who it's pointed at with egg. So egg, if we were naming a person, so egg an rupa, or something to agam, agat, ega, eki, and all the way down. So we can change that very easily from tá an obair déanta agam to tá an cluiche feiceáil acu. They have seen the game. And even if I want to say they had seen the game, bhí an cluiche feiceáil acu. So that's another cool way of changing it. You won't use the by and the bheadh as much just because it's not an idea that's expressed that often. The idea of I will have done something or I would have seen the game in terms of talking about the possible future. But you can do it and you might need it every so often. Doesn't work for verbs such as transitive verbs to go and to come. So essentially the same verbs that don't invert in the infinitive, if you've ever done anything like that or if you've ever noticed that. Well, it's a thing that a lot of people just learn without actually it being taught to them. They just kind of learn through kind of immersion that those verbs don't invert. Níl finish this, I think, on over a dhéanamh to do the work, but then it's dull go dtí an siopa to go to the shop. It doesn't switch around. But anyway, that's for a separate video, I think. And if we want to communicate the idea of I have been here for 2 years, and we're talking about a time period after I have been, le X anús is very good. So I have been very busy for 2 weeks. Tá mé an gnóg le gá seachtain anús, basically the 2 weeks up until now and continuing through. Again, can be changed to I had been by changing the tá to V. So, guys, the number one rule, just remember tá on a chain dagam. You can remember everything from there. Hope that's relatively clear. Any questions at all, as always, feel free to ask in the comment section below. Also going to be doing a Q&A in the new year. I have a post pinned to the top of the Patreon here at the top of the homepage asking for questions for that Q&A. So any questions at all can be Irish related, Learn Irish Online related, can be completely random questions, personal questions, questions about Spain, about Gaeilge Weekly. It does not matter, anything at all. Just leave them there, or you can send me a message here on the Patreon and I'll cover them all in the Q&A in the new year. So, Sinead, guys, míle buíochas, slán go full.